What's going on, champs and champets? It's FireMonkey here, and people are very mixed about sprites. Some people like sprites, some people don't like sprites, but one thing is very important to mention here, and that's the fact that the sprites, regardless of if you hate them or love them, bring Epic Games players. And it's something that we need to keep in mind when we're making this whole entire video talking about if sprites will be staying past the current season, because one incredibly important metric for Epic Games that they, of course, love bragging about, they used to brag about it for live events and stuff, is the amount of players that actually log in to play certain events in Fortnite. The amount of people that are logging in and just actively playing the game, you know, that increases the amount of revenue they end up getting, because the longer you're here, the more likely you are to go ahead and spend money on stuff in the game. And having a high player count is something we've actually noticed from these sprites being enabled in the game. Sure, you know, during times when there's not like a power hour going on, the player count is still a little bit smaller than we might have expected or might have anticipated for a big season launch or whatever, but at the exact same time, we've heard it time and time again whenever we get these like golden power hours, galaxy power hours, gummy power hours, all that type of stuff, that Epic Games is reaching like 2.3 million players playing at the exact same time together in public lobbies. It's insane numbers, right? You know, because if you really think about it, that means during a power hour, especially during a period where bot lobbies are heavily nerfed for the sprite collection aspect, we are getting so many millions of players logging in just trying to get the sprites they are missing. Like, for example, if it comes to gold sprites, just from those alone, I'm still missing, I think, like actually no, not the gold one, the gummy one. I'm missing like the gummy boss sprite, and then of course the grim sprite that is, you know, insanely rare to actually end up finding in the match. And that is something that made me play that gummy power hour after I already had all the other sprites obtained already, because I wanted to try getting a gummy, you know, grim sprite or a gummy boss sprite, even though I never ended up doing it. And it definitely increased the player count on their aspect, because had it just been something where I got all of them right away, you know, I'd probably hop off, right? I'm gonna be honest here, I probably would not still be on the game trying to grab more sprites, because I got everything that was already the focus for it, which is why I think when it comes to the player count aspect of it, this is something where Epic Games is kind of artificially changing the rarities of certain sprites during these power hours in order to keep at least one or two of them insanely rare while the power hour is still active, so that they're able to go ahead and keep people playing it. And sure, they already have that in place with stuff like the 0-point sprite, but there's certain things like the boss sprite, which I think is a little weird for me to go ahead and be able to find it over in the gummy, or not gummy, but the golden rarity before I even find it over in, you know, the gummy version. And I found the gold one before we even had a power hour active in the game. So I definitely think there's some artificial like rarity inflation or whatever going on with that whole entire system in order to make it so that people are able to play it for longer, even if they have 99% of the sprites. You know, for example, the Grim sprite, I haven't even seen a single one, and I have like the 0-point sprites, and apparently the Grim sprite's like 100 times more common than the 0-point sprite or something like that. So we obviously have some rarity in there that keeps people wanting to find the ones they're missing. But where am I going with this? This is a video talking about sprites, you know, lasting to the next season and everything. So why am I talking about artificial rarities and all this type of stuff and player counts? Well, simply put, it's because of the fact that it keeps us playing the game, right? And if Epic Games wants to continue having their player count super high, you know, they want to keep having those metrics so they can show it to advertisers or whatever else in order to get more collaborations in the game or whatever they might be trying to do, then high player counts are one of those metrics that really do help Epic Games out. And since it's working so well for them, because we've seen in power hours them getting like 2.3 million players playing at the exact same time, it is something that I definitely see them doing in the future and keeping going, because they know that this casual like sprite collection aspect is something that is keeping people engaged with the game in new ways that even normal battle royale was starting to fail to do. Because I feel in a certain way there was like battle royale fatigue, where, you know, it's like every single season you're like, okay, you know, we get a new item, we get new gimmicks or whatever else, new skins, but at the same time you kind of just sit there and you realize this is the same battle royale game you've been playing for like 41 seasons now, and it ends up not really mattering that much about all these new things, because the fatigue gets quicker and quicker for when you're done actually playing those battle royale matches. However, when you shift it and actually add a new mechanic in these battle royale matches that is completely separate from anything anyone would have actually normally expected from battle royale, it adds that freshness layer to it that keeps the season newer for longer and keeps people wanting to actually collect it. Now, will the sprite system get fatigued over time if they continue it up, you know, continuing with with different collectibles and stuff every single season? Yes. However, I definitely could see this being something that Epic Games keeps up due to that. Now, besides just what I can see, we have to go ahead and talk to you guys about the factual parts of the game files. So when they add new things for a season or whatever, it usually goes under a code name. For example, the sprite system is called Extraction. So when it comes to the different sprites in the game, those are Extraction UI, Extraction gameplay, that type of stuff. And then when it comes to the actual sprites themselves, they do have a different file, but they all get called onto by the Extraction UI and everything. And what makes it very important to mention that distinction of different UI elements and stuff is because of what they refer to sprites as in the game files. They are in a plugin folder called Sprite Boons, or, you know, like Sprite Mechanics or whatever else. You know, they mention Sprite in there, and Boon is kind of like the effect. And then Chapter 7, Season 3, or Season 4. I think we're in Season 3 right now, but it might be the different season or whatever else. But they specify the specific chapter and season numbering. And the reason why that is a very important thing to mention here is typically, when it comes to the file formatting Epic Games has done before, they don't specify a specific chapter and season number unless they're planning, and they have always planned, to go ahead and keep that system going on to the next seasons with new actual sprites or whatever buffs or whatever, you know, the system is added to the game. So considering the fact that they actually went ahead and had certain things named in a way that would evergreen it, which basically means that it would stay here forever, I definitely think that sprites is something that Epic Games always intended for us to be able to use and collect for multiple seasons now because of how interactive the aspect of it is. And I think that now they've actually seen the player count values of it and how these power hours are super effective, that they're going to keep doing this sprite system into future seasons, and that was kind of always the plan. Now, could they switch it up and maybe instead of collecting sprites for one season, you're collecting relics? Yes, that is something they had tested before with stuff like an 8-ball relic, you know, like having the cube, little like shard relic, stuff like that, a cracked foundation helmet, stuff like that is things that Epic Games has already tested before, so I don't think it will always be sprites specifically. Oh god, I don't think it will always be sprites specifically that they enable in the game, but it's still something that I definitely think they're going to reuse the extraction information from for future seasons to come, just because they know how many players it actually brings, and they know kind of how the community acts for this type of stuff. I mean, if you really think about it, we didn't really have, you know, a Fortnite reselling community or anything like that. You know, sure, maybe there was for like codes or whatever, but we didn't have one in terms of gameplay items since back when Save the World had a global chat. I don't even think Save the World has like a reselling community for cosmetics or anything, or not cosmetics, but you know, like bacon or ammo or whatever else anymore because of like the individualized loot. But it was always a problem with Save the World, especially when there was a global chat, and now we're starting to have that problem with Battle Royale with the sprite system and having people out here selling, you know, like Grim Sprite, all rarities bundled together for like $40 or something like that. And then you click on like the eBay listings and you see that it's like 25 people have bought this, 10 people have it in their cart. It is pretty insane. But with all of that said, you know, with all of these crazy pieces and stuff and gimmicks, you know, talking about the reselling community and things, I think regardless of if certain parts of it, like the reselling part, is a little bit of a bad aspect for Epic Games is going to keep this system going on for as long as possible until it becomes stale, because similar to the fishing collection book, it is something that keeps people engaged with the game. It is something that is going to keep people playing it, and it gives people a reason to re-log in after they've already, you know, gotten all their levels, completed the battle pass, or done whatever they need for all the different aspects of Fortnite, such as Battle Royale, Zero Build, OG, all that type of stuff. And it's something that I definitely think Epic Games is going to try their hardest to keep around, but similar to what we had seen before with things like the Fishing Collection book, I definitely think it's going to be a timed thing where maybe it sticks around for like a chapter, if that, you know, maybe a few seasons, and then when Epic Games gets bored of it, you know, when Epic Games feels like the actual retention player count aspect of it starts going down, they're going to scrap that idea, put the sprite system and the extraction UI system back in the vault, and re-release it maybe like 4 or 5 chapters down the line when everyone's forgotten about it. They'll reskin it once again and throw it back out there. But I think as of right now, based on everything we can see in the files and the player aspect of it in game, this is something that I hope you guys enjoy, because it looks like it's not going away. Now, as we've already seen by yesterday's video, they have plans for stuff like a lucky locator that guarantees you sprites you don't already have, so it'll be interesting to see if this sprite system stays for multiple seasons, if gimmicks like the lucky locator stay as well, or if it ends up being certain things where certain seasons, you know, those sprites are going to be a lot harder to actually obtain by the end than other seasons before it. Until next time, however, hope you champs and champions enjoy today's YouTube video. Let me know what you think about the sprite system in the comments down below. Do you want this to stay in the game, or do you kind of just hate it and want it to be over with? Or do you hope that if it stays in the game, it isn't tied to like a battle pass cosmetic anymore? Sure, they could sell like an item shop skin or something related to it, but you just don't want it to go ahead and have actual unlocks that reward you battle pass variants or whatever tied to a RNG system in the game itself. Regardless of what you think about it, one thing's for sure, and this is something I'm just going to add at the end because I think it's a little interesting, the sprite system is just a reskinned version of augments and boons and medallions that we've had before. Literally, in the files, they're called a augment ID for the different variant stuff that the sprites do, and they're also called boons. So it's something where this isn't really a new system, it's just a new way of introducing that system to us. So you'll probably see it reskinned once again in a few chapters from now. But until next time, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't like it, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow with another upload, so peace out.